That is a sentence bouncing around Filipino tennis Twitter tonight, just 48 hours before a single person has walked through the door. And it is worth asking out loud whether that sentence is even true. On Wednesday, July 15th, 2026, at the Glorietta Activity Center in Makati City, there are no tickets to sell. Globe Telecom, the company that signed Alex Eala as an ambassador years before she became a global tennis sensation, has announced the event as completely free and open to the public. Registration begins at 4 p.m., with the main program scheduled for 6 p.m. And even as recently as last week, organizers were still finalizing access details. Nothing is being sold. And yet, the sentence continues to spread because everyone reading it understands what it truly means. It means that a 21-year-old who was ranked outside the world's top 100 just 1 year ago is about to walk into a shopping mall in her own country, and the entire nation is preparing to welcome her. This is a story about what that sentence gets wrong on the surface and what it gets exactly right underneath. Just 6 days before Wednesday's event, Alex Eala walked off center court at Wimbledon after becoming the first Filipina in history to reach the round of 16 of a Grand Slam singles tournament. Her remarkable run ended with a hard-fought 3-set loss to Italy's Jasmine Paolini, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6. Eala fought back brilliantly to claim the second set, but ultimately couldn't finish the comeback in the decider. 2 days later, she was on a flight home. Then, on Sunday, July 12th, she landed at Ninoy Aquino International Airport Terminal 3, where an ordinary arrivals hall transformed into something resembling a championship celebration. Hundreds of supporters gathered to welcome her home, while Philippine Olympic Committee President Representative Abraham Bambo Tolentino personally greeted her at the airport. That unforgettable homecoming happened just 3 days ago. Wednesday will be the nation's opportunity to celebrate her all over again. There's a question that the tennis world has quietly been asking about Alex Eala throughout most of 2026. And surprisingly, it is not the question many people expect. It is no longer whether she can defeat the world's best players. She has already proven she belongs among the elite after defeating multiple top 10 opponents during her breakthrough season. Instead, the question has become whether one 21-year-old athlete can carry the hopes, expectations, and dreams of an entire nation without being overwhelmed by the weight of them, because that weight is very real. Other players have spoken openly about what it feels like to represent an entire country on the biggest stages. On Jabeur, carrying the hopes of North Africa and the Arab world, has described the unique pressure that comes with becoming the face of a nation. Alex Eala is now stepping into a similar role, and as her historic rise continues, millions of Filipinos are watching with pride, believing that their brightest tennis star is only just beginning her remarkable journey. A pressure that does not resemble ordinary tennis pressure. The Filipino fan base has, at times, disrupted matches and created logistical challenges for tournament organizers who simply were not prepared for the overwhelming support that follows Alex Eala wherever she plays. When Novak Djokovic was asked about the crowd surrounding Eala during the Australian Open in January, he smiled and called it a good problem to have. It was a diplomatic answer, and diplomats often choose those kinds of words when the reality is more complicated. The truth is that carrying the hopes of an entire nation is both a privilege and a burden at the same time. That is the real question beneath Wednesday's fan meet, and beneath the viral claim that Glorietta is sold out. Can Alex Eala continue carrying the dreams of millions while remaining the grounded, composed young woman who has brought her this far? Everything you need to understand about Wednesday's celebration is contained in the 5 months of tennis that came before it. It begins with her unforgettable victory over Iga Swiatek. Swiatek entered Wimbledon as the defending champion and world number 3. On center court, in the third round on a Saturday afternoon in London, Eala produced the biggest win of her career, taking the opening set 7-6 in an unforgettable tiebreak that ended 11-9 before dominating the second set 6-2. Afterward, during an interview with ABS-CBN in Tagalog, Eala spoke not about the magnitude of the victory, but about a small surprise from her team. Actually, this was a surprise to me. They made this. They showed it to me, she said while referring to a custom design on her racket bag that had been prepared without her knowledge. It was a brief comment, but it revealed something important about her personality. Even after defeating the defending Wimbledon champion on center court, she remained focused on the small, meaningful moments rather than the spotlight itself. That is a perspective that has defined her remarkable rise. Her Wimbledon journey ended one round later, with a hard-fought 3-set defeat to Italy's Jasmine Paolini, but she still departed London with the greatest Grand Slam performance of her career. Along with reaching the round of 16 for the first time, she earned a prize worth approximately £300,000 and boarded a flight home to a country that had been waiting to celebrate her long before she became an international headline. When you widen the lens, it becomes clear that Wimbledon was not an isolated breakthrough. It was the highest point of a wave that had been building throughout the entire 2026 season. In January, Eala became the headline attraction at the inaugural Philippine Women's Open at the Rizal Memorial Tennis Center, the first WTA tournament ever hosted on Philippine soil. In February and March, she traveled to Dubai and reached the quarterfinals of the Dubai Tennis Championships, where every one of her matches was completely sold out. Not as a figure of speech. Every seat was filled. After facing Coco Gauff, the American Grand Slam champion remarked, "I've played this tournament for many years, and to see the stadium full, it means a lot." She was not referring to her own popularity. She was acknowledging the extraordinary atmosphere surrounding Alex Eala. Then came Indian Wells in March, where reporters from Front Office Sports watched several thousand fans remain inside Stadium 3 until nearly midnight for Eala's second-round match. Even her practice sessions attracted crowds comparable to those gathered for stars like Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, offering yet another sign that Alex Eala had become one of the fastest-rising attractions in world tennis. Even during practice sessions, Alex Eala attracted crowds comparable to those gathered around Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, and Venus Williams on neighboring courts just a few feet away. Earlier in January at the Australian Open in Melbourne, her first-round match had been assigned to a smaller court because tournament organizers did not expect such overwhelming interest. They quickly discovered their mistake as fans packed every available space, many standing shoulder to shoulder against the fencing just to watch her play. That was not a one-time occurrence. It became a pattern that repeated itself over the next 5 months. That is what the viral claim about Glorietta being sold out is really referring to, whether the people sharing it realize it or not. Now take a moment to step back and consider what has happened to Philippines' relationship with tennis between January and July of 2026. In January, the country hosted its first ever WTA tournament. Just 6 months later, one of its own reached the round of 16 of a Grand Slam singles event for the first time in Philippine history. That is not a normal timeline. It is the story of a nation and a young athlete rising together at extraordinary speed in a sport that rarely changes this quickly. The growth of Alex Eala's career has mirrored the growing passion for tennis across the Philippines, and each milestone has fueled the next. That brings us to the third piece of the story, and the reason Wednesday's event carries far more significance than an ordinary fan meet. On paper, it is simply a public appearance at a shopping mall. Registration opens at 4 p.m. The program begins at 6 p.m. There are no tickets, no tournament draw, no match to watch, and no scoreboard to follow. Yet by Wednesday evening, Ayala Avenue is expected to feel less like a shopping district and more like the site of a national celebration. The reason is not clever marketing. The reason is something much deeper. Filipino sports journalist TJ Manitok explained it perfectly when he said, "The country has been hungry for the next Manny Pacquiao. When he was at his peak, life stopped. When there's a fight, nothing's on the road. Everyone's watching." That statement provides a perfect framework for understanding this moment. The Philippines have been waiting for a new sporting icon. Not just since Wimbledon, not just since Dubai, and not just since Alex Eala's breakout run in Miami the previous year. The country has been waiting for years. Now, almost without anyone formally declaring it, millions of Filipinos have reached the same conclusion. The wait is over. That is what Wednesday truly represents. It is not the day when Filipinos discover Alex Eala. It is the day when Alex Eala discovers, in the heart of Makati City, exactly what her country already believes she's become. The tennis world has been recognizing this transformation for months. Novak Djokovic described the crowds following her as a good problem to have. Former world number one Andy Roddick said on his Serve podcast that Eala's rise is the type of story you cheer for because it is great for tennis. BNP Paribas Open executive Philippe Dor told Front Office Sports, "We love every minute of it. We benefit from it. We promote it." Coco Gauff also spoke about seeing packed stadiums throughout the tournament, highlighting the remarkable attention surrounding Eala's matches. Together, these voices tell the same story. Alex Eala is no longer simply a promising young player. She has become one of the biggest attractions in world tennis, and Wednesday's homecoming is another milestone in that extraordinary journey. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, was among those who publicly reacted to Alex Eala's stunning victory over IGA Swiatek at Wimbledon, joining tennis legends Billie Jean King, Venus Williams, and Maria Sharapova. For Eala, Sharapova's recognition carried even greater significance because the former world number one had been one of her childhood idols. That is an extraordinary group of people. It is the room that a 21-year-old from Manila now finds herself standing in. Whether or not the tennis establishment has fully embraced her yet, it has unquestionably turned its attention toward her. Now zoom out one more time, because the real significance of Wednesday is not Wednesday itself. Just 12 days after the Glorietta fan meet, on July 27th, Alex Eala will return to competition at the Mubadala DC Open in Washington, a WTA 500 event. From there, her schedule continues with the Canadian Open, the Cincinnati Open, and finally the U.S. Open at Flushing Meadows, which runs from August 30th through September 13th, the final Grand Slam of the season. Before Wimbledon, Eala had already earned $871,438 in prize money during the 2026 season, and a round of 16 finish in London added another £300,000 to that total. Her world ranking now sits around number 30 or number 32, depending on the latest ranking update. Those are impressive numbers. But numbers are not what Wednesday is about. Wednesday is about something that cannot be measured on the WTA website. It is about an entire country standing in front of Alex Eala and telling her what she has come to represent. When she walks onto the hard courts in Washington less than 2 weeks later, she will not be walking onto the court alone. She will carry with her the confidence, belief, and expectations of millions of Filipinos. That sense of purpose did not exist a year ago. Over the past 6 months, it has been built piece by piece. First in Manila during January's historic WTA event, then in Dubai, at Indian Wells, in Berlin, at Wimbledon, and now, fittingly, in the most ordinary setting imaginable, a shopping mall just a few kilometers from where she grew up. On Wednesday evening at 6 p.m, that journey comes full circle. It is also worth remembering that she is returning home not after a perfect ending, but after a difficult defeat. Her Wimbledon campaign concluded with a hard-fought 3-set loss to Jasmine Paolini, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6. Eala responded brilliantly to level the match by winning the second set, but she was unable to finish the comeback in the decider. It was a genuine sporting disappointment, and it remains the last competitive match she has played. She has not spoken publicly in detail about how that loss affected her, and there is no need to invent emotions or quotes on her behalf. What can be said with certainty is that her flight home had already been planned before the result was known. She was always coming back to the Philippines. The only question was whether she would return as a fourth-round Grand Slam player or as something even greater. She arrived as a history-making Wimbledon round of 16 competitor, and the country welcomed her home with open arms. Crowds fill the airport to celebrate her arrival, and even larger crowds are expected to gather at Glorietta on Wednesday. In the end, that is the heart of this story. The Philippines was never waiting for Alex Eala simply to win a Grand Slam. It was waiting for her to come home, so it could tell her, face to face, just how much she already means to an entire nation. So, let's return to the sentence that started it all. Alex Eala's Manila fan meet sells out Glorietta in minutes. Strictly speaking, it isn't true. Nothing is actually being sold. There is no countdown on a ticketing website, no sold-out notice, and no seats to purchase. Instead, there's a shopping mall in Makati City, a registration table opening at 4 p.m, a program beginning at 6 p.m, and a 21-year-old tennis star who will walk through the doors with her team, her security detail, and prepared speech she will probably end up speaking from the heart instead. Nothing was sold, yet everything was already spoken from the hearts of the people planning to be there. That is the more accurate version of the story. Just 48 hours ago, the question was whether Manila would show up. By Wednesday evening, that question will already have its answer. In reality, the answer was decided long before Wimbledon. It was decided during Alex Eala's breakthrough run in Miami last year, reinforced by the sold-out crowds in Dubai this spring, and confirmed late one night at Stadium 3 in Indian Wells when several thousand fans refused to leave until they had watched her compete. Those moments were not isolated incidents. They were milestones on the journey that brought her home to this moment. By the time Alex Eala steps up the microphone, the crowd will already know the scoreline that changed everything. 7-6, with an unforgettable 11-9 tiebreak, followed by a commanding 6-2 second set against one of the world's best players. They will not simply be cheering for a tennis player. They will be chanting a name that once belonged only to a family in Manila, but now resonates across an entire nation. Alex Eala has earned her place on center court, and she has earned her place in the hearts of the Filipino people. On Wednesday evening, those two worlds come together in the same place. If you want to see what happens next, the journey continues with the Mubadala DC Open in Washington on July 27th, followed by the North American hardcourt swing, the Canadian Open, the Cincinnati Open, and finally the U.S. Open at the end of August. But before all of that, the next chapter begins in the most unexpected setting imaginable, a shopping mall in Makati City, where thousands of Filipinos will gather not because they bought a ticket, but because they want to welcome home the athlete who has inspired an entire nation. Wednesday's event never needed tickets. It never was about selling seats. It was always about celebrating a homecoming,